take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? I'm a human being, God damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Let me make sure that you understand I'm not here representing the NRA. I'm not even a member. Okay? Secondly, I'd like to say that in your opening statements, you commented specifically on my testimony, saying that basically it had nothing to do with this issue. And I had to chuckle because then I noticed you had Mr. Brady up here, who was hit not with an assault weapon but with a .22 caliber revolver. So getting beyond that, I didn't grow up in a house with guns. I don't hunt. I personally abhor hunting. But I was given a gun by a friend when I was 21. To carry in my purse for self-defense, and I was taught how to use it. A couple of years ago, my parents and I went to a cafeteria in Texas on a bright sunny day. We weren't in a dark alley where we weren't supposed to be. And as you all know the story, this madman drove his truck through the window. And he began shooting. Well, immediately, my father and I got down on the floor and put the table up in front of us. And this guy kept shooting. And you're thinking, what could it be? Is it a robbery? That's the first thing that generally comes to mind. And he keeps shooting. It took me a good 45 seconds to realize that this man wasn't there to commit a robbery. He wasn't there for a hit. He was there to simply shoot as many people as he possibly could. Now, I'd like to make something clear. I hear all this talk about how many bullets can go in a clip. I've been there. I can tell you it doesn't matter. It takes 1 second to switch out a clip. You can have 1 bullet or 100 bullets. It doesn't matter, guys. I've been there. He goes, dump, dump. Just like that. That's not enough time to rush a man. I promise you. When I finally realized what was occurring, I thought, I got him. And I reached for my purse. He was maybe 12 feet away. Is it possible my gun could have jammed? Sure. Is it possible I could have missed? Sure. But I can tell you I've hit much smaller targets at much greater distances. But then I realized that a couple of months earlier I had made the stupidest decision of my life. I took my gun out of my purse and left it in my car. Because as you well know, in the state of Texas, it's sometimes a felony offense to carry a gun in your purse. I can tell you that I'm not mad at the guy that did this. As he continued, it was obvious that he was a madman. My father, at that point, said, I've got to do something. I've got to do something. He's going to kill everybody in here, and he rushed the man. No way. This guy turned, shot him in the chest. He went down, was obviously mortally wounded. For whatever reason, that made the man change directions and go off to my left. Shortly thereafter, someone at the back of the restaurant broke out a window. When I saw what looked like an opportunity to escape, I turned around and I grabbed my mother by the shirt and I said, come on, we've got to run, we've got to get out of here. And then my feet grew wings and I was out the back window. As soon as I got out, I realized that my mother had not followed me out. And as I learned from the police officers, she had crawled over to where my father was and cradled him until the guy got back around her, put the gun to her head. She looked up at him, put her head down, and he pulled the trigger. My parents had just had their 47th wedding anniversary. She wasn't going anywhere. As I mentioned, I'm not really mad at the guy that did this. And I'm certainly not mad at the guns that did this. They didn't walk in there by themselves and pull their own triggers. The guy that did it was a lunatic. That's like being mad at a rabid dog. I'm mad at my legislators for legislating me out of the right to protect myself and my family. I would much rather be sitting in jail with a felony offense on my head and have my parents alive. As far as these so-called assault weapons. You say that they don't have any defense use. You tell that to the guy that I saw on a videotape of the LA riots, standing up on his rooftop, protecting his property and his life from an entire mob with one of these so-called assault weapons. Tell me that he didn't have a legitimate self-defense use. Just one final statement. I've been sitting here getting more and more fed up with all of this talk about these pieces of machinery having no legitimate sporting purpose, no legitimate hunting purpose. People, that is not the point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting. And I know I'm not going to make very many friends saying this, but it's about our rights, all of our rights, to be able to protect ourselves from all of you guys up there.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden. I'm Virstyne Henry. Please visit our website, truthertease.com, our store, shop.truthertease.com. Check out our YouTube channel. We're making Truther Rants. Virstyne did a Truther Rant that's doing pretty well. It's pretty popular. It's got a lot of likes and a lot of comments on there about gun control called They Don't Really Care About Us. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, or you are going to be talking with the Patriot Nurse. I stay for the show, but you guys are going to get into that and talk about the gun issue and gun control and all that big old bag of bullshit, you know.
Bullshit. Gun control is bullshit.
And it really is. It is bullshit. And I think it's, she did a video, the Patriot Nurse did a video called Gun Control is
Bullshit, yeah. It is bullshit, yeah.
We liked it. We wanted to have her on because she's really smart and she knows her stuff and she understands about all that, and so you'll get to ask her questions about all those things. And
yeah, I wanted to meet her and I wanted to have her on too, because also what really bothers me, I think people have a habit of just stigmatizing people and putting them in categories, right? So I think people have this image of people that are gun owners as stupid hillbillies or dick bangers that are stupid, and it's not true. Maybe I'm sure there's some truth to all stereotypes, but even you know, I've known some gangbangers that have guns definitely are stupid, because if you're living in a situation where you know you could virtually be shot, I think it is actually wise to have a gun, especially if you're in an area too that's in a high crime area, and the policemen aren't going to always be able to come and protect you.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually, it makes more sense to defend yourself in a high crime area. I saw, what was that video? It's Stefan Molyneux, and Stefan Molyneux is very interesting because there are times where I just think he's a genius, and then other times I think he's an idiot. Like, he's very fascinating to me because he's very, very hot and cold.
Right.
Like, literally, like, there's sometimes things he talks about, I agree wholeheartedly, 100%, and then the other times I'm just like, you're fucking stupid. Like, how do you even, how did you even, that? But getting back to him, he did this really good breakdown on, it's called Politics. You can YouTube it. It's Stefan Molyneux, Politics, the Ethics and Politics of Gun Control. And he talks about the statistics. He talks about basically how there's no correlation between gun ownership and crime. I also found this Harvard study that talks about that there's no correlation between gun ownership and crime. But for some reason, people think if you own a gun that you're necessarily a violent person. You're just go out shooting people for shits and giggles. And there are crazy people like that, but that's very, 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 very rare. These shootings, you know, that happened, it's very, very rare, you know. That's a tangent, you know.
I think that the statistics are that there's actually more violence in areas that don't have guns.
It is.
And, I mean, places like Chicago, which is gun-free. Recently, I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a girl, a 15-year-old girl, who sang at Obama's inauguration, and she was from Chicago, and she was shot and killed just a couple days ago. And so, I mean, she's living in a gun-free zone, the city of Chicago. So I find it to be, we know that we are in a gun society. We know that guns exist. We know that people are going to own them, whether legally or illegally. Therefore, why should people be made to not own them or own the kinds of guns? Because it's not that they're – because most of the arguments will say that it's not that they're against the Second Amendment or that it's against people owning guns. They're against them owning certain types of guns. And that's one thing I think that, and Patriot Nurse is like, well, bullshit, because no, I should be able to own whatever gun I want.
The military owns, basically. So you're supposed to level the playing field. I had a friend that made a really great statement. He's like, if the military has tanks, then I should be able to have mines in my yard to protect myself from the tanks. And really, you should, because it's like, why do these weapons exist in the first place?
Right.
Right? To basically conquer and obliterate people.
Yep.
Lots and lots of people. I mean, of course they shouldn't even exist in the first place. Like, what do you think people get tanks to fight terrorists?
Yeah.
Well, if you're really fighting a few terrorists, do you really need a fucking tank? No.
Yeah.
We have tanks to go in and overrun people in countries and for war, and mostly it's because of wars that our military has instigated.
Yeah.
Against the people, and then we go into these countries that basically the people are helpless to defend themselves because they don't have weapons to level the playing ground. So then they're genocided, basically.
Yeah, it's historically that's how it goes. I mean, any country that's had to remove their guns, then they become genocided, because what Gandhi said, it was the darkest day in India's history that they had been had criminalized all their guns, and they had to disarm the citizens of India.
Yeah. Because
then British imperialists just came in and just took over at that point, and then they had nothing, and they were just being gunned down in the walls. And you've seen the movie, that really happened. They actually were just gunning them down and just firing on unarmed citizens. So it's really bad with what psychopaths can do. So you just want the psychopaths to have the guns. You don't want to actually let people who statistically are far less likely to commit acts of violence. So the government has a far greater history of violent acts and committing violent acts than we do as a populace, and yet we're the ones that are supposed to take away our guns. What?
I know.
It's totally illogical. I mean, they're the ones that are going in and droning and murdering children.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
As we speak. It's not even like, because I hear people, they're just people, I just want to, like, fucking slap them sometimes. When I've made a comment talking about the government, and they're just like, well, do you honestly believe that our government, is going to rise up and turn against us? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing it right now.
Right.
Why would they not do it to us? Why would it just makes me so angry.
Right. Yeah, they're like, "Oh, we don't have to worry about that right now." Well, you mean right now, like as in this very minute? Maybe not, but we're talking about, we're historically, you have to know your history so that you don't repeat it, and historically that's what happens when you disarm a country.
But people aren't reading and stuff. They're too busy watching, like, the Kardashians. You know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, and we're living in a place and time where, especially the generation that's coming up, and my generation, your generation, I would say too, we just had a lot of stuff just kind of handed to us. We haven't had to fight for anything.
Right.
My parents, they went through, like, the civil rights stuff, and, my mom did because she was from the South. She's from the South, but, and then your parents in the, with the 60s and Vietnam, and we just haven't, because we haven't even had to deal with the draft, really,
That's right. We haven't, and
we're kind of spoiled.
We are kind of spoiled, and we're
kind of, okay, we are. I don't even know, kind of, we are.
Right.
Spoiled.
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's true, because we've had a different kind of culling against us. It's been more subtle. Yeah. We've been, with the GMOs and the fluorides and the vaccines, it's actually been more direct to us, but it's subtle. It's because it's Orwellian, so it's posed as a benefit to us, and so we're indoctrinated to believe that this is all a benefit to us, but it's not.
No, I see what you're saying, but at the same,
Yeah.
Because it's subtle, people don't really realize the goodness that they have. Like you know what I mean? They don't realize that that you know they've had it good compared to other generations.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm speaking of like from my perspective as the autism mom in my community. Like we, in a way, we have it a lot harder than our moms did and their moms did, because we're having to deal with not just raising our kids and not being able to just say, oh, let your kids go outside and play.
I got you.
You know, we have to like, you know, we're constantly being, and it's more common, you know, back in those days, I mean, I'm sure there were always kids that had disabilities and you had problems.
It's pretty rare though, yeah.
But it was rare, and the community was more likely to help. You know, they would see you, because it was rare, and everybody knew each other in neighborhoods back in those days. Nobody knows each other anymore, and so things have changed. So in a way, you know, we're not going to war, but we're at war, whether we know it or not. We're actually at war, and because we're fighting a war, and as a parent of, you know, a child with a disability, I feel constantly being, you know, discriminated against and constantly being, you know, watched and monitored and all this kind of stuff. So it's something that I have to be aware of, and I have to be conscious of on that level. And if you're not awake and you don't know that people are looking at you that way or thinking of you, you know, it's even harder. So I would say,
gotcha.
Yes, we're spoiled, but not in one sense, but in another sense, we actually have it worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they didn't have to deal with, they weren't being sort of just killed by their very existence, you know, living and trying to just eat something that didn't kill them, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right.
You could go to fast food back in those days. It wasn't that big. It wasn't that bad, you know. People ate normal diets in the 50s and the 60s. They weren't doing health food, and they weren't doing all this, and they just
the disease epidemic that's come
right.
up with obesity and diabetes and all this stuff, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have those problems back then, you know. They weren't dealing with that kind of stuff. It wasn't as common. I mean, I'm sure there were fat people, but it wasn't like it was.
Oh, it's an epidemic, like, you know.
Right, now it's an epidemic, and it's a major health problem. Now, you didn't have, you know, so many disabled children. You didn't have so many things. So we're spoiled in that we haven't had to live in times where we haven't had to live through a depression. We haven't had to live through a war.
Yeah.
But we're certainly being attacked in another way. And it is subtle because some people don't recognize it at all. But I do, because I have to live with it.
Got you. You know what, though, too? It's just very interesting that Maxie, again, talked a little bit about this, and I knew about this that I forgot. You know, they have UN forces that you know, that people think that they're going to call in if they're really going to go ahead and try and confiscate guns from Americans, because you know, with people like Stuart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers and a lot of the military starting to wake up too, there's also this question of like, are the policemen and are the military actually going to respond to the orders of disarming the American people? And you know, I've been thinking also, it's just like this crazy cycle, because it's just like, you know, we have this government that's starting illegal wars, killing all these people, you know, and then they're recruiting people from those countries. And, you know, I'm sorry, if somebody were to kill my family, I want revenge.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to get these people that have, you know, maybe been orphaned, you know, in another country, that have been killed by Americans. Of course they're going to want to come and kill. You know what I mean? If they're joining the UN forces and they're going to become soldiers, I couldn't wait. If that was me, I couldn't wait to kick some American ass.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just very scary. And then, you know, a lot of our military actually is away fighting and getting killed themselves in the war, or coming back mentally disabled, not mentally disabled, mentally traumatized, you know, and killing them, their families are killing themselves, you know?
Yeah.
it's just this is just the wrong time to be disarming the American people. This is
we cannot have ourselves disarmed, and it's Max Egan said that the American people won't give up their guns. I think that's true, but if it comes to that, they might not have a choice.
Well, it's going to be war though, and it's the part of me that thinks that they actually know what they're doing as far as like they want to start a civil war, because then they can come in and really lock down. Because forget the guns for a minute, they have other weapons that are like, they have drones that have they have those sound wave machines, they have those microwave machines. Have you seen those? They're militarizing, like the police too, with in some parts of the country with these things, these microwave machines that you can turn up, and it can mess with it can make microwave you or mess up your hearing, your ears, like it's just insane. So they have actually weapons that the public doesn't have beyond that. But I think there's a part of me too that thinks that they're trying to like start something.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think they definitely want us to have conflict, and they definitely want us to be fighting each other. So just to see how far it's going to go and how far the people will let it go, because it's really going to be up to us as to whether or not we're going to allow them to come in and take it, because it's it's kind of our last thing. I mean, they're really taking away so much and really making it so hard for us to do what we want for ourselves, with all the medical mandates and all the other things, and the taxes and everything else. So this is kind of the last straw. I think that when the Patriot Nurse did that, her gun control manifesto, she basically said, "This is it. This is the line in the sand. It's we cannot let them take it any further."
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at right now. So hopefully we'll succeed, and we're not going to let them take it any further.
We're gonna win.
Yeah, I think
I gotta stay positive. It's positive, but you know what it is? I think it's starting to wake a lot of people up too.
Yeah.
People, I think, if they're pushing, it's starting to wake a lot of people up. Now, I hope it doesn't, get to the point where it is physical conflict, because I don't want to see anybody dying, and that, I don't want to see anybody getting hurt. But also, it's like, at the end of the day, we're just going to be killing each other off, and it's going to play right into their hands.
Absolutely.
So thank God for Stuart Rhodes, people that are reaching out to the police and the military, because they're people too. They're not all bad.
And all of the sheriffs that have, I can't remember that guy's name, but there was that sheriff who said that he wasn't going to take away the guns from the people, even if he was ordered to do so. Do you remember that guy?
Yes. I don't know his name, but I posted it.
I would love to get him on the show. He sounded really cool.
Yeah, but there are a few other sheriffs too that have come forward, and it's great too to see, just so that one person can give somebody the strength to come out too. So I think since that one sheriff has come out, there's some other sheriffs that have come out and be like,
right?
You know what I mean? It's like
they can go into the business, of in law enforcement, because they actually really do want to protect the people. Then they have to recognize that it's not going to protect the people if they disarm law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
So if you commit a crime and you commit a felony and you have to have your gun rights taken away, then that's one thing. But if you're not a felon, but you're being treated like a felon, then that is, it's almost like self-fulfilled prophecy. Then, it almost makes you want to be, I don't know, it's weird. So with that, we're going to take a short break, and when you get back, you'll be talking to Patriot Nurse. And
PT.
Yeah, I can come back with you the next day, and we'll wrap it up. But so we are Truth or Talk. Thanks for listening. Visit our website, truthertease.com. When we get back, Virstyne, I'm going to take off because I got a family day, but Virstyne is going to be talking to Patriot Nurse.
Right.
All right.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. It's telling me it's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a T-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist T-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
The Patriot Nurse is an actively practicing RN with a BSN. In addition to her work in the United States, she has also traveled extensively for medical mission work. She takes a very balanced approach in prepping that is decidedly reason-based. She believes many people, after prepping for a while, begin to realize their preps are covered in food and weapons arenas. She also believes that medical preparedness is decidedly less glitzy, but is integral to a well-rounded plan for thriving. During times of difficulty, she teaches prepping courses and hosts her own shows on YouTube. More info can be found about her at www.thepatriotnurse.com. I'd like to welcome the Patriot Nurse to the show. Welcome. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Good. Yeah. So, first of all, I would like to understand, or I know that you give courses on prepping and survivalism. So, where would you advise our audience to start if they want to begin disaster planning or prepping without taking a class first? I mean, just home stuff.
The easiest way to start for most people, well, let me back up. Before we talk about a plan, we have to acknowledge some of our limitations and also acknowledge the situation. When many people start to begin to wrap their head around the need to prep, it can seem very overwhelming because there's so much stuff to do. And this is typically when we get accused of being fear-based. Oh, you're so fearful. How could you live your life in fear? Okay, forget fear. I don't operate in fear. I operate in reason, and I operate in hope. So let's start off on the right foot. So the easiest way for most people to go about this is to have readily achievable goals, small steps that they can take. And ironically enough, women tend to be the ones who are going to, I think, be doing most of this. We tend to think of prepping as something as a pursuit resigned to men decked out in camo and tactical nylon. But really, women are very, very integral to this equation. So what we can do is to begin acquiring food in progressively longer intervals. For instance, if you have, let's say, a week's worth of food at home, most Americans don't even have that anymore. Go up to 2 weeks worth of food. And the way that you do this is, everybody's on a tight budget right now, but every time you go to the grocery store, if they've got a 2-for-1 on a food item that you eat regularly, then go ahead and get 2 of them. And as you build your way up to 2 weeks, then go to a month, then go to 2 months, then 3 months, then, so and so and so and so. But this way, if you could build your food up, that right there is going to help cushion you and insulate you from a lot of the panic, number one, from natural disasters. In the South, where I live, snow is a 4-letter word. And whenever it gets uttered over the television or over the radio, I kid you not, within about 6 hours, you go to the grocery store, there is no bread, there is no milk, and there are no eggs. Because we had a really bad blizzard here in 1994, and people were out of power for weeks on end, so they're traumatized naturally. But having food stored up for yourself will alleviate most of the stress of the uncertainty of an event. Because if you've got food, really, your most important basic need is met. Water right there is on top of that, but food and water are a big thing. So that's the way that I would reasonably approach someone's opening act into prepping.
That's a really good way of putting it. Okay, well, I noticed you have these series of video, and in your videos you have a series I call like When the Shit Hits the Fan. Mm-hmm. And well, from your educated guess, from your observation of what's going on in the world today, what are some things that you believe can cause the shit to hit the fan?
Well, we have to ask ourselves first, what does shit hitting the fan look like? Because an absolute disaster and breakdown for one person, that could be very different from somebody else. But what I think the underlying question is here is, what are some major scenarios that could set off a cascade of events that really bring about widespread panic or widespread breakdown in our standard of living? The first one that I think is realistic is a natural disaster. I'm not alone in this. Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast, which is an excellent resource I wholeheartedly endorse and recommend, Jack Spirko is of the perspective that a natural disaster is one thing. I mean, we have seen with Hurricane Sandy and before then Hurricane Katrina, natural disasters are certainly very, very high up there on the list of probabilities that can cause widespread chaos, panic, breakdown in our system. So the natural disaster is the first. Second is, in my opinion, is pandemic. In a microcosm, we're seeing this in the United States because of the flu outbreak. We've had a horrible flu season this year. I think this was on the front page of the Drudge Report some weeks back, but it's officially a pandemic, and they're showing the states that are blacked out and, the hospitals that are overwhelmed, et cetera. A pandemic, like a legit high death toll pandemic, we are long, long overdue for. That is certainly a contingency that I have in mind. Third is, to be quite honest, a decay of our monetary system at a rapid descent rate, if you want to think about it that way. To look at the stability of our dollar right now versus some years ago, especially when we were on the gold standard. Now, you're comparing two different birds here. But I can tell you that I'm not alone in this. Our credit rating has been downgraded. I am certainly not as assured of the stability or the real worth of our dollar now as compared to 20 years ago. Of course, I was only 8. So my version of currency would have been peanut butter and jelly versus Lunchables to trade at the lunchroom. But our dollar is going to be worth progressively less and less. Much of this has to do with NAFTA, and Ross Perot made a few very grim predictions. He was not alone in this back in the day. But Ross Perot was right. We have outsourced our labor, and so that really right there, our manufacturing, by doing that, we have undercut the basis of a strong economy. And so now what we're finding a lot of is that people in the 20 to 28, and really honestly 20 to 30s, especially our men, are having a very difficult time getting jobs that actually pay that they can raise a family on. So you have an increased level of desperation on the part of people because our dollar is worth less and because our workers here, the jobs that would have propped us up 20, 30 years ago, they're not here anymore. So really what we've set ourselves up for is a collapse financially. And I haven't even, expanded that outline in great detail. But those are really the big three that I have in mind.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, those are all really very real possibilities of things, that can cause the shit to hit the fan. So I'm just curious, how did you get involved in prepping? Was it a family thing, or was it something that you stumbled upon yourself?
Well, that's a kind of a two-pronged answer. With any, how did you get into this? You have to acknowledge the environment plus your genetics. And I am an 11th generation East Tennessean. So my family heritage has been one of subsistence, actually, up until the generation before me. My father was the only one in the family to, at his time, graduate high school, then to college, and get out of the mountains. But we, as a people, as a culture group in the southern Appalachian region, are very much used to dealing with hard times. I grew up knowing how to can and preserve food and put up food. And having a garden was something that I was just used to. And so that kind of that was the soil, if you will, that the seed of prepping was sown into. What really kicked it off for me, it started when I recognized that I was in charge of my own personal security. And that was when I was 21. When I was in college. And it occurred to me, you know what? No matter how well-meaning and how well equipped the police are, they cannot be with me at all times. Yeah. I am in charge of my own security.
Yeah, they show up usually after a crime has been committed.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the thing is that the police are under no obligation to respond to a scene of violence if you're in danger. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to, but the legal precedent is such that if the police officers suspect there's likely bodily harm to be incurred to them, that they are not required to go to your aid.
Oh, wow.
But there are many, many discussions on this. But really, when it came right down to it was the realization in my early 20s that I was responsible for my own personal security. And from there, I got my first handgun. And round about 2007, with the first election of the president, after doing a wee smidge of digging, I ran into a wall of information that I could not dismiss about what we are experiencing now with weapons bans, or they're certainly trying their best to be able to ban our weapons. But really, it was an ownership. It was a cultural inheritance of ownership for your own security from a food and from a lifestyle standpoint. But then for me, that realization in my 20s that I am responsible for my own personal security, the confluence of those two factors, I think, really helped make me into what I am and inform my perspectives today.
Do you feel that because you feel a lot of people are against having guns, so to speak, or because they don't want to take responsibility, because they're kind of lazy? One of the reasons, and they don't want to take responsibility for their safety, they rather have somebody do it for them.
I think that could be part of it, but I'm willing to give human nature a little bit more benefit of the doubt. One of the first, whenever I'm introducing a new shooter to the prospect of having a weapon first and then carrying a weapon, really, the human being has certain innate fears: sudden movement, loud noises, and scary things that go bad.
Yeah.
And a firearm has all of those in here within it. So naturally, people are afraid of those things, and it does take a certain amount of effort and internal drive to overcome that. And that's if you have a desire to. Now, let's backpedal. We have been programmed, less so in this country than a lot of Europe, per se, but we have been programmed to think that the government is our friend, that it is here to help, and that we will be protected by the almighty arm of whatever branch, usually the executive branch, local police department, whatever.
Yeah. So in Asia, it's really bad. The programs are really bad. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Usually, people are afraid of guns because they have been, honestly, the victim of of a culture that is bent on demonizing tools, per se, especially in Hollywood. Very, very rarely are the good guys, the ones that show up to save the day, and they are not cops. They're not dressed in black. It's very rarely the good guy who triumphs at the end. There was one, I forget what movie this was. It was with Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts, and they were running.
The Pelican Brief.
Yes.
I've never even seen that movie, but I know that they were in that was the movie they were in together.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember watching the Pelican Brief. It was after I had started carrying my firearm. And I remember thinking, they're spending all of this time running, just running from, the bad guy. And I'm sitting there thinking, this situation could be remedied and we would have no movie in about 10 minutes. If Julia Roberts had said, "Okay, sucker, you going to hurt me?" Bang. Done.
Have you seen that scene in Indiana Jones? The Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the guy takes off the sword and he's about to do something. Bang. And gets on with it,
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, we need to be realistic about, on carrying non-lethal options as well. I always carry OC, pepper spray, as well. So, and the gun itself will not fix close quarters issues, like when you're dealing with, really honestly 12 feet or less. But I think that most of the reason, to return back to the point of the question, I think that most of the reason why people are initially afraid of guns is partially because of our innate fears as humans, but also because of the programming that we have received really from the time that we were in our early childhood. That guns are associated with the bad guys, and the good guys who show up with guns are always in uniform.
Yeah. And I guess I was going to ask you, why do you think preppers are stigmatized? But I think that just answered the question, because they're not like the cops in the uniform. They're they're taking their own safety into their own hands. Therefore, they must be crazy, or something must be wrong with them, which is bullshit. But
well, the difference between someone who is crazy and someone who is a visionary. Time. That's it. Someone who is crazy 2 years before a collapse becomes a visionary when it happens 2 years later.
Yeah. How did you know this was going to happen? Are you psychic?
No.
Well, yeah.
Just
a
student of history.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've recently become a student of history. I used to hate history, actually, but now that I've been studying history, it's so fascinating how it repeats itself. And now we're in an age too with the internet. You can actually go back and you can see footage of things that happened, but there's still people that refuse to do that, and it's so frustrating,
Indeed.
Yeah. So I heard you say in one of your videos that you used to be obese, and I was just wondering what events led you to make the change to become healthier?
Well, I got to think back here. I was 14, and I weighed 220 pounds and was 5'3", which led me to have a size 24 pants. And I got to a point where I really have to ascribe that change to God, because there is no reason, given the risk factor set that I have, that I should have been able to kick it. None. But it occurred to me one day, if I do not fix this, I am going to die. Yeah. And that's a pretty heavy bit of mortality to lay on a 14-year-old. But when you're looking at yourself in the mirror every day and you're like, I cannot wear the clothes that my friends wear. I mean, you're a teenager, so...
Yeah, you're thinking of
everything.
Yeah.
And I remember we used to have gym class at school, and all the little girls, the popular girls, used to carry their gym clothes in a Gap bag. Little blue Gap bag with a drawstring. And I remember thinking, because I went to the store at that time, this was before we had, widely available, no pun intended, plus sizes. And I remember thinking, there's not anything in the store I can wear. How am I ever going to get a Gap bag? And I went to the counter and just asked them for a bag, because there was nothing that I could wear. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And so I recognized, I started taking an inventory of the food I was eating, and I recognized that I was, like many traditional Southern women, eating biscuits and gravy for breakfast with bacon and eggs. And then I was eating another probably 1,000-calorie lunch. Then I was coming home and having another snack, which was about 500 calories. And then I was having a good Southern dinner. So I was probably intaking about 4,000 calories a day when it was all done.
Southern dinners, yeah. My mom's from the South.
Yeah, let's tell you, we fatten them up good. Whether it's our livestock or our children, they are going to be fattened. But I started making the changes there. I cut out lunch, and it was really an evolution. Became a vegetarian when I was a junior in high school, and I still am. Now I've cut out, I have a regime that I do for 6 days out of the week. I do not eat milk or beans or any grains or sugar. And then Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown, I can have whatever I want. It still includes no gluten, because I can't tolerate gluten. But that is kind of what I do. I do love raw milk, though. Let me just tell you. Woo, good stuff.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really have dairy. I can do cheese every once in a while. I'm a vegetarian too, so. But I have to do a lot of almond milk and coconut ice cream and all that stuff because I just get really congested. I have asthma, so. Anyway, so speaking of being obese too, I saw the video, which was I would call it a tough love. Maybe I can think some people would think that's really harsh, but you did a video on who's going to die first.
Yep.
And I thought that was great because maybe it would really force people to think about the situation that they're in. And one of the people that you said that were going to die first were the obese people. It's true because they need to move, and people with respiratory problems. I have that, but I'm working on that, and that's something when I first started, I guess, researching and becoming a part of the truth movement, and I thought about potential doomsday scenarios that can happen. That was one of the things damn, I need to be able to run, So it's really got me to kickstart and really take my asthma seriously because that's one of the things that can hinder me.
It's true.
So It was really interesting. Also, okay, so what is force-on-force training?
Force-on-force training.
Yes,
What force-on-force training is, there are a few places that I recommend. If you are in the Indianapolis area, Mindset Laboratory is a great place to take force-on-force training. And then if you're in the South, Tactical Response does force-on-force training called Fight. So you can visit both of their websites, tacticalresponse.com and mindsetlaboratory.com. Force-on-force training is simulated real-life scenarios that involve fighting. You are using factory-modified, usually Glock 19s, that have simunitions in them. Basically what they're sort of souped-up paintballs.
Okay, I was going to ask, is it like
souped-up
paintball?
paintball.
Yeah.
And you're wearing protective gear and stuff so that you don't get too monstrously hurt. But what force-on-force training is, the instructors at the curriculum, I don't want to give their stuff away so that it's new for each student. The instructors put together a series of scenarios that are evidence-based that you are, as a private citizen, most likely to find yourself in, which would require you to use deadly force of your weapon.
So would you say it's like practice, putting into practice everything that you've learned?
Yeah. Well, for instance, let me give you just a random scenario. Let's say that you are most likely to, if you are walking down the street, if you're not in a particularly good part of town, that's the first problem. Don't do stupid things at stupid times at stupid places with stupid people. That'll get you out of most of the trouble. But let's say, for instance, that you're going into a scenario where you have to go and pay for something at a gas station, and that 7-Eleven or whatever gets held up, God forbid. In that situation, you have to basically act like you would in real life, except you're using a fake weapon to accomplish it. And when you are in the mode, when you are really, really there, it will scare the crap out of you. To be quite honest, unless you've gone through it so many times. But anybody who can say that they went through those things and they didn't have any fear, yeah, they didn't take it seriously enough. But force-on-force training was the single...
Or they're lying.
Yeah. Force-on-force training was one of the most important things that I have ever done. Because what it does is it shows you this is how you're really going to react. And it allows you to focus more on certain areas with your training regime. So I wholeheartedly recommend it. I recommend force-on-force training because it really isn't enough to go and plink at a range, and it honestly isn't enough even to go and take some of these the fighting classes, like tactical training classes, because there is no way that a paper target X number of meters away is going to elicit the same adrenaline response as a real-life play actor who's a bad guy who's trying to hold you up or abduct you or something like that. So force-on-force training, it brings things into real life for people. And it is, in my opinion, some of the absolute best money that you could spend on firearms training.
Oh, cool.
The mindsetlaboratory.com in Indianapolis and Tactical Response, their force-on-force class is called The Fight at tacticalresponse.com.
Okay, cool. So going back a little bit, so because we talked about the flu, that a pandemic can be something that it could be a potential doomsday scenario. So due to the recent flu scare, do you think that there's anything that the general public can do to prepare for any disease epidemics besides, I know we talked about adding food, but just maybe as far as health, anything that they can do to prepare for disease epidemics that might happen in the future?
The first is to make sure that regardless of the circumstances, that they have the ability to get clean water without the use of electricity. You can survive a good long while without eating. Your health is going to deteriorate very, very rapidly if you don't have water. You're going to get thirsty, number one. But having readily available clean water is a huge thing. Because even from a disease fighting perspective, your body is not going to be equipped to do what it needs to do if it's dehydrated. It also is not going to be equipped to do what it needs to do if the water that is being put in your body is contaminated. You may very well be making things worse. So making sure to have a filtration system like a Big Berkey, some type of gravity ceramic filter, very, very, very important for people. Hand washing, obviously, is kind of a duh thing. I love thieves oil myself. What I do, I just drop thieves oil in a vaporizer in the house, and I keep that thing going all during flu season.
What is thieves oil?
Thieves oil, it is a mixture of 5 essential oils: rosemary, eucalyptus, clove, cinnamon, and lemon oil. And you can get it from Young Living. There's also some people who, I think doTERRA makes it. There's some fancy schmancy oil places, oil purveyors that sell it, but you can make it yourself. But I keep that going in the vaporizer at the house. Not only does it smell wonderful, but the oils in the mixture have very strong antimicrobial properties. So it's like an air purifier, too, and it smells good. So it's a winner all around.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about gun control, because it's been a hot issue, and it's been a grim reality that's been plaguing us at this moment. So I want to know, I want you to describe to our audience the Second Amendment and why, your interpretation of the Second Amendment and why it was written into our Constitution.
Okay. Let me see if I can quote this from the top. Pardon me if I mess something up.
It's okay.
A well-regulated militia being necessary for the preservation of a free society, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's a lot in there. You've got to understand who the writer was. Jefferson was probably one of the single biggest opponents of a strong centralized federal government. So if Jefferson is writing this, I can guarantee you that the intent was not that the power, especially of weaponry, be centralized and concentrated to just the government. That's why it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not shall be infringed with reasonable limitations. Who defines reasonable? Does the government define reasonable? Because I can guarantee you if the government defines reasonable, the people's ability will be curtailed. It always happens that way. It's one of the reasons why Jefferson wrote it that way. When we look historically at governments that have made moves, whether incrementally or strong-armed and sweepingly, every time that a government has sought to disarm a minority group or to partially disarm the populace, it does not stop there. It always spreads. It's like ripples in a pond. Yeah. This happened with the Jews. This happened in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge with Pol Pot. I encourage everyone to research what happened in Cambodia. Pol Pot was schooled in France under socialist dogma. And then he got this great idea that he was going to come back and help Cambodia relive the glory days. And so one of the first things he did was disarm people. And then he started killing all the doctors and the nurses and the lawyers.
Oh, the intellect, yeah.
All
intellect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I tell you why, because if you remember, Pol Pot, because he was schooled in France, he had a healthy knowledge of what happened during the French Revolution. The French Revolution would not have happened without the bourgeoisie, the middle class, the intelligent, the educated middle class. Pol Pot recognized that if he could cut out the middle class, the bourgeoisie, then he would have direct control over the peasantry.
Oh, yeah. That's the MO, though, for all these things. Mm-hmm. You kill off the intellects,
mm-hmm.
you know.
And the way that it's happening right now in this country is that they're not necessarily killing people off in masses, although there are, as of late, some very concerning accidental deaths that have presented themselves certainly within the firearms community that I have great reason to suspect were not accidents. But for the most part, the way that this is manifesting right now is that the intelligentsia or the intellects, the academics who dissent from the prevailing majority line, they are being intimidated. They are being mocked. I mean, think about Ross Perot on Saturday Night Live. Ross Perot, they made fun of that man left and right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about deficit. Yeah. I'm sitting here like, he's the only one who's making sense. So what they do is they belittle the people who make sense, because most of the populace, and this is very kind of fatalistic and maybe perhaps a bit derogatory of human nature, but most of the populace is just not that smart. Many people, well, actually I have a good friend, his name is Claude Warner. He was the lead instructor for the Rogers Shooting School. And he has this saying, he said, most people believe they're extraordinary when really they're mediocre. There's a lot of truth to that. So if the people who are intelligent, the intelligent dissent, if it is being mocked and silenced, then the people who are not as able to critically think, they're going to follow whatever they're told to.
Yeah.
They will mock the intelligent and the academic as well.
They get controlled by peer pressure. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Japanese have a proverb that says, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Yeah.
So whenever someone stands up, especially for an issue as hot as gun control, if they make any sense at all, at a bare minimum, they're going to be demonized, which I expect. You know, I'm not like
shocking.
No, I'm not some huge, you know, YouTube personality that, you know, I'm above nature and I have, you know, thousands of thousands. I'm fully aware of my own limitations as a human being, and there needs to be humility interjected in the mix. But I tell you what, it is amazing just to see how rapidly people get polarized on this issue, because it hits on two things that are very near and dear to the human heart: life and fear. And most people, when it comes down to it, are dominated by fear.
Yeah.
So if a gun looks scary, and if there's this big scary, the media calls it assault weapon. I refuse to use that term. I will call it a semi-automatic rifle, which is what it is, or a defensive rifle. So whenever people stand up on TV and they make these things, you know, look absolutely horrible, they don't put the faces of the killers up there, mind you. It's just the guns. They don't put the faces of the people up there that are disturbed and deranged.
Yeah.
Because that would elicit responsibility on the part of the human, not on the part of the weapon.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there's a lot to it.
I heard you say one of yours you went to Cambodia. You went to Chongek.
Sorry?
Is it Chongek?
Chongek.
Chongek, Cambodia, and you actually stood in the killing fields. Yep. What was that energy like? What was that like for you?
Sometimes English is a poor language to be able to describe adjectives. Dark, hollow. It's like standing in a room where someone has just died. My first experience with post-mortem care at the hospital. There is it's like a vacuum, almost a vacuum that takes light out and away from a place. Chongek, and there are other killing fields in Cambodia as well, not just Chongek. The place is just it's very hollow. It's very sobering, and it leaves this pit in your stomach. It's actually pretty emotional to talk about, because I hadn't really thought about the feelings there. The feelings are what really gets you, more so than the images per se. But it's just a very hollow, it's a very dark, dark place. And when you experience that, especially being an American, and I've had this conversation with my own family, we have grown up with two generations of people, especially in the United States, who have lived in an unprecedented time in human history. Peace, prosperity, and liberty for the most part. We cannot wrap our minds around what these people went through in Cambodia and Auschwitz and, Krakow, all these horrible places.
Have you been to Auschwitz as well?
Not Auschwitz. I have not. Although I did go to Yad Vashem in Israel, and I did get to speak with Holocaust survivors.
I actually met a Holocaust survivor, and it's different when you talk to somebody than reading it in a book,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there is a silver lining to switch gears from Cambodia to the Holocaust. there is a popularly portrayed notion that the Jews and also political dissenters, gays, Christians, there are a lot of people. It wasn't just the Jews who were killed.
Handicapped people and
retarded children,
mentally,
the absolutely merciless regime. There is a popular perception that the Jews just for the most part just went to the gas chambers willingly. I would encourage people to look up a nice little group called the Black Forest Partisans. The Black Forest Partisans, and also the Partisans of Vilna. There were women involved in these groups. They led armed resistance against the SS. They blew up train lines that were going to supply clothing, weapons, food to the Germans. They conducted many different small-level guerrilla-type operations in order not only to curtail the Nazis' ability to fight their wars, but they also liberated a fair amount of Jews from the ghetto. And actually, when you look at the ghetto in Vilna, which is in Lithuania, there were 30,000 Jews in the ghetto before the Nazis began their extermination. There were 3,000 afterward, with 1,000 of the Jews remaining in the Vilna area being in the forest. So 1/3.
Oh, isn't that what the movie Defiance was about, or based off of? Do you see that movie with Daniel Craig?
I haven't seen that movie. I actually don't get to watch a lot of movies. What I typically do is documentaries.
No, it's a movie. Maybe I'm thinking when you said that, I'm thinking Defiance was a movie about people. Yeah, they basically built a fort and defended themselves against Nazis in the forest. Yeah, so it's a cool movie. I actually like that.
Yeah, there are two really good documentaries. One is called Partisans, and the other is called the Partisans of Vilna. No, it's not Partisans. It's called Resistance. My fault. Resistance, and then Partisans of Vilna. I wholeheartedly recommend those movies. Because they are an honest portrayal of real people who are still alive in many cases, real people's honest struggles against a tyrannical government that sought to destroy their family and their way of life and everything they hoped for. So whenever people bring up this juvenile notion of, our government would never do that. No, really?
I know. It's
our government, mind you, when the Jews...
They're doing it in different places right now.
Well, of course they are. I do not have any. The United States government is no different from any other government anywhere else in the world, mainly because we are humans, and humans are inevitably their default, in my opinion, is not towards good. It is toward malice, especially when we prey on our base instincts. The only thing that really keeps us in check is the Constitution. And the Constitution, thank God, was written by men who were very well versed in history, who were even better versed in the pitfalls of human nature. And so they wrote it, I guess from their perspective, they wrote it tight enough to be able to curtail evil, but it is rapidly being shredded. It has been shredded for a very, very long time, and it didn't start with Obama. I think probably the greatest movement in our lifetime has been the Patriot Act towards shredding our freedoms. Yeah. But it definitely can happen here. And I actually, again, was talking to my friend Claude Warner, Rogers shooting school instructor. And he said, Rachel, this is what you need to remember about the United States. We have a very short track record. We have a very short running history. This serves for our benefit greatly in issues of social change. For instance, in the issue of civil rights. We went from being a country where a black man and a white woman being married was some great fits to sensibility in the 50s. And in the span of less than 2 generations, it's now relatively non-offensive in most parts of the country. But you're talking about a tremendous societal upheaval that happened in a very short span of time. Now, this can work for our good, but it also can work for our detriment. Yes. Because within that same built-in ability of a young country with a multicultural constituency, Within that country's ability to make rapid changes for the good also exists the ability to make rapid changes for the bad. So it wouldn't take very long, for instance, if the government, the powers that be, the media, which really is a kind of fascist entity.
Yeah, we're just being served propaganda right now, not even, yeah.
If they were to make a concerted effort, like they are doing now, towards demonizing gun owners, law-abiding gun owners, mind you.
Yeah.
People are simple enough, and they are used to being driven by their base instincts enough that it could very easily happen here within the next 30 years. We could experience an Auschwitz type of scenario. I don't know which group it would be, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but the possibility exists for something catastrophic on that level to happen here in this country in a very short amount of time. In fact, going back to the monetary issue,
I would say maybe even sooner than that.
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
To tie this together with the monetary issue, when I was in Yad Vashem, we were looking at. I went with my late fiance, Paul Gomez, who we filmed a lot of videos. So if people are interested in learning some wonderful firearms techniques and stuff for free, you can visit his channel because I filmed all but I think 2 of those videos. But when we were in Yad Vashem and we were looking at the beginnings of what became the Holocaust, we looked at the money from the Weimar Republic. And printed on the money, this is pre-Nazi Germany, Weimar Republic, on the money, printed at the very bottom, were the words, "The Jews have debased our currency to this. The Jews have debased our currency to this."
Oh, wow.
So, when you look at the monetary crisis that was either created or happened, however you want to view it, when you look at the monetary crisis that came immediately before the Holocaust, you can kind of understand a little bit better why people had more important issues on their plate at the time. And in fact, in many cases, because the private property of the Jewish people was given or sold at, 90% losses to non-Jewish residents of the conquered German territories, you can understand how people saw that it was in their financial interest to deliver their neighbors over to the Gestapo.
Wow.
Yeah. So
really
we are right there. Our Constitution is the only thing that really is, and in my opinion, the mercy of God is the only thing that is keeping us where we are at. We have a population that functionally has decided to vote money out of a minority's pocket to vote it into their own. We have a population, especially really this past generation, 30 years and under, and I'm one of them, that has, for the most part, in my experience, been given almost everything they wanted. And when that IV drip line of morphine, if you want to think about it that way, when the opiate of free and easy money and credit to get stuff and things and benzes and whatnot, when that is clamped off, many people don't know how to cope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they want someone to blame. And if there is anybody to blame for things right now, preppers, gun owners are certainly part of it because people are angry. They're angry about having their standard of living degraded. And whenever there's somebody to lash out at, it's just like the Roman Colosseum. Whenever there is a common enemy, there's somebody to lash out at, the mob will join together to pick on that person, that minority, that demonized person. John Adams, actually, it was a wonderful statement. He said, a mob is no less a mob because they're with you. Mob.
Yeah.
So, we need to be aware, we need to be very discerning with the information that we receive from any media outlet. We need to put it through a strainer and distill out what is real and true, what could be true, what might be true, and what's possibly true.
Yeah. I have a question. This is could you describe the difference between a handgun and an assault rifle for people?
Oh, okay. Well, a rifle
and a machine gun. Sorry, if they're, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. People talk about these automatic weapons to be off the streets. Automatic weapons are already off the streets. You have to jump through a ton of federal loopholes to get an automatic weapon. They are not out there. An automatic weapon, to simplify it down here for most people, you put in a whole bunch of ammunition, and it will just run, and just shoot them all off. A semi-automatic rifle is not that way. It is limited in that it will not just shoot to oblivion. You have to pull the trigger each time in order for it to release a round. A handgun, of course, is a smaller weapon. It works with a smaller caliber of ammunition. It does not, if you want to think about it this way, pack as much punch as a rifle does, and much of it has to do with the velocity and the spin of the bullet as it's coming out of the rifle. Little handgun doesn't have the ability to do that as much. But they are both excellent defensive weapons, and I'm a fan of them.
So, what do you think? I'm just curious, since on the heels of Sandy Hook, because of things that have happened there, and because handguns really account for more deaths. If you just want to take guns, right, and be like, oh, handguns count for more deaths, why do you think they're trying to blame assault weapons and going after assault weapons? If they really want it to, curtail the amount of deaths that happen via gun, why do you think that is?
Well, this president and many of the members of Congress who are actively behind this legislation have made it very clear from the beginning that they do support, in their term, actually, I don't want to use their term, that they support the banning of defensive semi-automatic rifles. If you remember, in the presidential debate, both candidates, Romney and Obama, both mainstream candidates, I guess I should say that, both mainstream candidates lent their verbal support to a defensive semi-automatic rifle ban. So this has been their goal from the beginning. Dianne Feinstein had made it very clear years ago that she and her cronies were coming for our guns. They will pick the time and the place, but that they were coming for them. So the modus operandi, the way that these people operate, has been from the beginning that they would wait for a crisis that would get the public sentiment stirred up enough that they could push through their legislation, if they were going to use legislation, but now it's become an executive order. And the executive order in and of itself is limited, which has led many people to say, oh, well, he's not going to be able to accomplish things. That's not the point. The point with an executive order is that it generates the inertia from the back end. It sets federal policy to a level that makes it more comfortable for the states to oblige the legislation. That's the problem with it. One of the problems with it, not the problem with it. But the way that these people operate is no different than the way the Nazis did the Reichstag fire. And folks can look that up. But basically, it was an attempt to galvanize the populace against a mutual enemy of all, the Jews, because of course the Jews do everything wrong, and it's they're the ones who are to blame for all the world's problems. But our government, though it is constrained by the Constitution and better than many on this planet, make no mistake about it. The people at the top recognize that they cannot have the level of control they desire if the populace is sufficiently armed to be able to resist them.
Yeah.
And that's what Thomas Jefferson wanted. Jefferson was kind of a quizzical character. He sliced certain parts out of the Bible to make his own Jeffersonian Bible because he wasn't comfortable with miracles and such. But the man was a very astute observer of not only individual human nature, but also governmental human nature, and the nature and the long path of tyrannical oppression of governments who had consolidated, centralized control of arms and weaponry.
Do you have any contact with any like military personnel? How much of the military do you believe is awake to what's going on?
Well, it is growing. I can say that. I do spend a very good amount of my time. Many of my friends are active not only in the tactical training community, but also have served or do currently serve in our armed forces. And they are awake, most of the people. And it could be just a reflection of my own choices of friends. But most of the people that I interact with are awake. They are very, very much aware of the move instigated recently from the executive branch to indirectly confiscate or certainly limit supply of weapons. And let me tell you something that a lot of people are not thinking about. Whenever they hear the term being floated, close the gun show loophole, what that effectually does is outlaw private sale. Universal background checks, that will outlaw private sale, functionally. So by closing that gun show loophole, that consolidates the power to distribute arms solely within the hands of the government. Because if the government can decide unequivocally who has the ability to buy weapons, then they have already taken one giant step towards getting them all. Right there. And the Nazis did the same thing. Whenever there is a database, they've created a list. If there's a list, they will come for them. It's only a matter of time. So when I encourage people who are listening to this broadcast to contact not only their senators and congressmen that represent them in the United States Congress, I think, to be quite honest, that's important, but I kind of see that as a side issue. The states at this point are going to reassert themselves against a tyrannical federal government. And that's really been the check and balance on the power system in this country from the beginning. But my state, and also many states surrounding, have put forth legislation that would effectively block federal interference on the gun issue within the borders of their state. More power to them. More power to them, because when it comes right down to it, the states are going to be the ones at the end of the day that are going to determine whether or not this battle is won or lost.
Did you see the Alex Jones Piers Morgan debate?
Yes.
What did you think?
Well, there were two prevailing opinions of that debate. First is that, good for you, Alex. Damn it, if I'd have been there, I'd have said the same thing. And ship Piers Morgan back across the sea, the lobster back. Let him be where he needs to be. The other side of the spectrum, I just can't believe that Alex Jones was so disrespectful on air. I think that if we really want to win people over, that we need to be calm. Friends, we have debated and hoped for reasonable, rational conversations with the opposite side. We have played this game for years, and it has gotten us nothing but more legislation and federal regulation, with the exception of the expiration on the 1994 defensive semi-automatic rifle ban. I am at the point, and I've released a few videos. The first one was why gun control was bullshit. That one is a, logically presented, calm display of my objections to gun control and why it doesn't work. Then there are people who, like myself, have gotten more than a little bit pissed off. there is a time for righteous indignation. And the fact that so many people, especially those who are, quote, law-abiding and responsible gun owners, that they would feel uncomfortable that a man full of righteous indignation would get on national television and give a non-U.S. citizen, by the way, an earful, who functionally is telling him that your right to self-defense should be set by a government, and that I, as a non-U.S. citizen, am going to cast my 2 cents into the pot here and tell you what you can and can't have. The fact that so many people would have objections to righteous anger, that right there troubles me, because it says 2 things. Number one, that people have become castrated in this country over what's important. The only things worth getting angry about is if your favorite Dancing with the Stars person loses or your football team loses. That's acceptable to get angry about. Yeah. But an issue that determines the rights of millions of people to defend themselves, that's not okay to get upset about? We got a problem. So we've either got to castrate a populace or a populace whose value system is so screwed up that they cannot see the right hand from the left. Both of those are equally troubling to me. So I'm saying more power to him. Good job. I don't care if you got a little bit angry. There are some things worth getting angry about, and your ability to defend yourself and your family and your property is one of them. Huzzah.
Did you see though, like a week or 2 before, that Piers Morgan went off on Larry Pratt? Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was actually more disrespectful because he didn't call, Alex Jones didn't call him names. He called Larry Pratt an unbelievably stupid man, and I was very proud of Larry Pratt. He got his point across and was like, bam, bam, bam. He just made Piers Morgan look like an ass. It was just kind of funny. Cause,
Larry Pratt is infinitely more controlled than I would have been in that situation.
Yeah.
There's not enough Scots Irish in me to give a good fist and a what for to any Englishman that dares to trample on my rights. We fought this a long time ago, but there's enough people down here that are willing to do it again.
So, it's the only thing that I agreed 100% what Alex Jones had to say. Just the only thing is, I think that now because he did that, I think he kind of played into the hands of people that wanted to stigmatize, because the people that watch Piers Morgan's show are the type of castrated people that you talk about, Well, all the truthers were like, well, we know, like he already has us. We know what he's like. We know, we watch his show. We know, what type of person he is. And he really cares, that he's not a violent person. He doesn't preach violence, But, well, I think I would have cursed his ass out too. I don't think I could have handled it. I can't stand him, and I can't stand anyway. But I understand that too. But
there has been a lot of discussion regarding videos and interviews, etc., with people from the firearms community and those who are strong advocates of the Second Amendment. There's been discussion that they are playing into, quote, whoever they are, their hands by getting angry, etc. I don't really think so, and let me tell you why. First off, tyranny, even though it may be cloaked in white gloves, is still tyranny. Somebody who looks at me coldly and says, I'm going to kill you, is no different than somebody who says, I'm going to kill you. And honestly, of all of the people that I've seen who are the most sinister, who concern me the most, it's the people who can look at me square in the face and say, I'm going to harm you. Oh, really? Okay.
Catch more flies with honey, like they invite you over to dinner and they like poison your tea or something.
So I'm not so concerned about it. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, the people, this is my firm belief, the people who can be swayed in this argument is probably less than 10%, because it's such a fundamental thing. And maybe this is a fault on my part, and I'm willing to consider that perhaps it is. I feel like we're at the point, and this could be a regional thing too, where things are so polarized that the people who are going to have eyes to see, they either see it or they don't. The people who have eyes to see, who recognize that encroachment upon semi-automatic defensive rifles also known as assault weapons, that encroachment upon that, it will not stop there. The people who see that, they know what's coming. The people who don't see it, I got no hope for them. And for the most part, they're probably the people that went along like little sheep to the slaughter with every other major move against a minority group. And there's not much you can do about that, because there's an awful lot of people who are programmed to lay down and obey whatever the government or whatever the man or whatever their boss tells them. I'm not one of those people, and I never have been. It drove my parents crazy when I was growing up, because sometimes I wouldn't comply with something I didn't feel like was particularly appropriate. But I believe that will serve us well. We are coming into a space and a time and a generation where people are going to have to stand up, and we're going to have to get angry, and we're going to have to get vocal, and we're going to have to rattle some cages in order to get this done.
Yeah, it's sad. It doesn't seem like there are a lot of people around with character anymore. It's just to do that. And like you said, I love how you said earlier that we've lived in an unprecedented time of just having basically anything that we want. So people can't even wrap their heads around the fact that something like this can happen, especially in America. And it's very interesting because, when I talk to people and they say stuff and they're like, oh, do you honestly believe that the government's going to rise up and rise against you? Do you believe that that's possible? I'm like, yeah. And the only reason that they can really give me why they believe that that's not possible is the fact that they just don't want it to happen. Well, so,
when people bring that subject up and ask you, do you really think that the government could come for you or something like that? I'd say, well, maybe. Have you ever read the history of Germany? You ever read the history of Cambodia? Let's go right down.
Yeah, I've done that, and then I refuse to look into conspiracy. The whole thing is a straw man. It's a straw man.
Yeah. It's a straw man of a logical argument. I'm going to attack something that doesn't really exist, rather than actually dig in, look at the merit and the value of the argument, and make an informed decision for myself.
I've been looking at a lot of YouTube videos for people that are pro Second Amendment, and a lot of them are actually getting overwhelmingly. They're pro gun, right? Pro gun ownership. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them are getting a lot of likes, and the people that are pro gun control are getting a lot of dislikes. Which I like overwhelmingly. So I was looking at that stupid ass, excuse my language, the Demand a Plan campaign with the celebrities, and then now they're getting people who are supposedly victims of shooters to come out and be like, my son was shot and I'm against guns because guns are bad. And it's overwhelmingly, I would say maybe 500, for instance, 1,000 dislikes to 500 likes. Mm-hmm. So I'm really wondering, too, if just the media, that there are more people that are actually, I don't think a lot of people are actually falling for this.
I hope not. But I can tell you my honest observation that much of this issue is decidedly geographical. This country is not a homogeneous ethnical base. When you look at the people groups that are predominant in the Northeast, they are very different from the people groups that are predominant in the Southern Mountains and in the South versus the people in Montana, Idaho, Washington State versus SoCal. And when it comes right down to it, and I had this discussion with one of my friends in the training industry, I told him, look, one of the reasons why you are experiencing the kind of backlash to some of these videos up there in the Northeast where my friend lives, one of the reasons why you're experiencing this is because you're in a different country, friend. We are, in my opinion, united in name only, which is kind of disturbing when you think about it. But really, it has always been this way. Even from the early onset, our country was a confederacy of historically very divided colonies with very different not really socioeconomic, but very different cultural makeups, very different geographical makeups. And let's not dismiss the impact that land has on a people. People who grow up in the mountains where they're used to having to climb uphill to do things. It's a very minor thing. But when you have integrated...
When you're in L.A., you just have a car. Not even used to walking to, like, the store. You have to drive next door. You know, it's different.
People are going to be very, very different, and their character is going to be different based on their predetermined genetic mood, if you will, their temperament, but also where they are raised in the culture of how they are raised. In the Northeast, it is one big giant nanny state. I'm sorry to our listeners up in the Northeast, not trying to diss anybody, but if you look at the legislation, it is a huge nanny state up there. When you get down to the South, and God bless Texas, it's leave me the bloop alone. I'm going to take care of myself. I don't need your help. Thank you very much.
And they have a very low crime rate compared to places like Chicago
and New Jersey.
They have strict gun laws.
Yeah.
And, you know,
yeah,
it's very interesting. So, I really enjoyed talking to you. We're out of time. But are there any other closing statements you'd like to make? Would you tell our audience where your website is and your YouTube channel?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called, surprisingly, The Patriot Nurse. I also have a website aptly named thepatriotnurse.com. I travel all around the country, and I teach medical preparedness classes. The most popular class that I teach is Medical Prep 101. It is an intensive 8 to 9 hour day where we spend a good amount of time doing knowledge reviews. We do skill sets. We take blood pressures, do vitals. I teach physical assessment. So if folks are interested in learning how to prepare more effectively from the medical aspect of things, I recommend and endorse my whole class unabashedly for folks. They can check out the website, www.thepatriotnurse.com, for more information. The course schedule for 2013 is up, and they can register and sign up today.
Okay, cool. We're going to take a short break, and we will come back right after our break. All right. Bye-bye.
I was on holiday with Sir Laurence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear we had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertees.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertees.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertees.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
Hi, welcome back. Virstyne was just talking to the Patriot Nurse, so how'd that go?
Oh, it was so much fun. She's a great lady. I wish I had to actually cut the interview short. We would have gone on longer. We definitely would have gone on longer. And it's just so interesting how, you know, people have this stigma about people that own guns, how they're just crazy, violent people. But she's just somebody that really cares. I mean, hello, she's a nurse.
Yeah.
She's a nurse, and she also, you know, has just taught herself basically how to defend herself, which is great. But she also teaches classes on, like, how to care for, you know, wounds. And I think it's really cool that she also teaches how to care for gunshot wounds. Because if you're gonna you know, be shooting a gun, you know, maybe you might get shot, you know.
Sure.
So you're gonna have to know how to deal with wounds, which is brilliant. And she just cares a lot. She's very, 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 very smart. Just a pleasure to talk to, and I'm glad. I actually would like to take a class, but she's booked up all for this year. So.
Wow.
Yeah, till 2014. So she's gonna be traveling and teaching survival courses throughout the year. So sounds really cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
she's definitely a cool chick, and I'm sorry I missed the interview, but I like watching her YouTube videos and have subscribed to her channel for a while, and she's just because she does have a lot of good info, and she's strong on her stance on the gun control issue. She's not going to back down. She doesn't want to, let that.
She does it because she cares. That's what I got. I just hate the fact that people just put that stigma on gun control owners. That they don't care. That's the thing that I'm coming across too, especially since Sandy Hook. There are people like, oh, you don't care. It's because people like you that are for gun ownership. You're the reason why those children died.
Right.
Fucking
right. Well, what about them and their gun-free zones?
Oh, did you see that Project Veritas video?
I didn't see it, no, but I think I know what you're talking about.
I would tell the audience, there's this wonderful organization called Project Veritas, and Veritas is Latin for truth. And basically, they are trying to revive investigative journalism because it's pretty much dead. Because now, all the news that you're receiving is propaganda. They don't really give another side. They're just told to report. And anyway, so it's this kid. He looks pretty young. I mean, he does investigative journalism, trying to get just people to go out and do investigative journalism on their own. And then he does these videos. He did this one video about gun-free zones, and it was really clever because what he did, he created this fake group called Citizens Against Senseless Violence.
Right.
And what they do is they go into the communities and say, hey, we're citizens against senseless violence. Are you for gun control? And the people are like, yeah. They're like, really? Well, why don't you just put this gun-free sign on your lawn? gun-free sign on your your lawn, right? This house is gun-free, something like that.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Like, why not? If you're proud of it, just show it, shout it out.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody, of course, agreed to it.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it just gets them to admit their own hypocrisy and is.
I know it's true because whenever I see Piers Morgan, I see Larry Pratt on Piers Morgan's show, and Larry Pratt always just has such. Larry Pratt is the head of Gun Owners of America, and he's had gone on the Piers Morgan show to debate him a few times, and he goes on and he always just sort of rules Piers and just owns him because he just comes up with facts. He's just like, look, because Piers says, well, in America we have a larger rate of gun violence versus the UK, where it's actually illegal. But the UK actually has more violence per capita than we do here in the United States.
Yeah.
And they actually have more crime per capita than we do here in the United States.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, that's hogwash.
Yeah.
He gets so mad. It's so funny.
Funny, he gets so mad. And then Larry Pratt also pointed out that they have in areas where you actually are allowed to, so the more gun control that there is in that area, so in the city of Chicago, for example, they have a lot of violence in the city of Chicago,
and
the citizens aren't allowed to own guns. So he said in concentrated areas where they actually have higher, more strict gun control laws, they actually have more violence. Yeah. So he's saying, you're looking at the United States as a whole, but you're not actually paying attention to where the gun control laws actually exist. Because we still have state sovereignty, you still can have, create laws in a municipal area and a city, counties, etc. So you don't necessarily, you can say, the United States in general, but that doesn't, there are different gun control laws in each state, and there's different gun control laws by city and county. And so, it's not really accurate or a fair apples to apples comparison to say that you have, the UK versus the United States, because we don't have the same types of rules. But anyway, so he just owns that guy, and so Larry Pratt's just owning Piers Morgan all day long, and so Morgan turns to him because he has nothing to say. So first time Larry Pratt came on, he just insulted him, started calling him stupid.
Oh, yes, he's like, you're an incredibly stupid man, and you're an idiot. And I'm just like, even Alex Jones didn't call him names,
Right. But, and so Piers Morgan, and then the second time he came on, Larry Pratt, he just started saying that Larry Pratt was insensitive and that he didn't care about, he goes, each time I interview you, I look for some form of compassion or sincerity. I'm like, dude, you're the one who doesn't care about the kids.
And he told him that in a very classy way, because I'm paraphrasing, but he was just like, I find it insensitive that you're siding with the side of the criminal and not the victim. That's insensitive to me. And then he couldn't take it. He like went off. He went on one of his like British like rants. You know, like he was just like, he couldn't take it. He got shut down. It was great. He's so classy. I love to see classy people shut dumb ass people down. It's better than like the Super Bowl. It's amazing. It's so entertaining to me.
Yeah, exactly. It was really cool.
Hey, you got quiet when I said better than the Super Bowl. Did I?
Okay. No. I don't care about the Super Bowl.
Okay. I was like, oh snap, maybe this is Super Bowl fans are like, okay, you took it too far.
No. I don't actually. I would rather watch, Larry Pratt debate Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan is just a nuisance. He's just a little like gnat on the wall, in my opinion. He's useless, but he it's just funny, all this hypocrisy that they come up with, all these things. The way I feel about it is, if you don't want to own a gun, then don't own a gun.
Yeah.
But why do you have to enforce laws on people who aren't committing crimes?
Yeah. And people don't get the criminals. They don't fucking register guns. Right. I had this one a comment this lady wrote me, or somebody wrote me, and they're like, well, what, I think I should register. They said if I had a gun, I would be proud to register it because the criminals would read the paper and they know that I would have a gun. I'm like, dumbass, criminals don't fucking read. Yeah. They don't, like, most crimes are committed on impulse too. Of that nature, they're committed on impulse. The only really the well-planned crimes, or like the blue collar or the white collar, like high up in the like crimes like that are thought out. But when people like get shot or shoot or rob or they're gonna break, it's usually on impulse. They're not planning it out. They're not reading the list of people who have guns.
No, it's usually on drugs, and it's generally a drug problem in this country. It's like prescription is a big problem. It's becoming more prevalent than actually illegal drugs. It used to be that illegal drugs were the predominant cause of gun violence, and now it's prescription is like catching up, and it's actually probably going to surpass it at one point. But it's really people on drugs, or they're hurting others to get money for drugs, or they're fighting. You have inner city. You have the gangbangers. They're fighting over like whose turf it is to sell drugs in that area, or who owes whose money, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's the same thing as what happened during alcohol prohibition in this country. Yeah. We had there was a tremendous amount of gun violence, and those people aren't concerned with the gun laws. They're not concerned with gun control. They're not
just get a gun. They'll just get a gun on the black market.
Right, exactly. There's always ways to buy them, and they'll buy them from the military, so they'll end up getting military style guns that people you can outlaw, and then so it's ridiculous, and people are just they don't connect they don't think they want to pin the crimes on the guns themselves, which is, to me, it's ridiculous. It's an underlying issue that they're not even attempting to look at. Yeah, exactly. It's just they just say guns are bad, and then they won't even look at the other side of it. They just think that, I don't know, it's again the fake liberal hypocrisy. Yeah. That we were talking about before. It's like this whole liberalism is just, sometimes it's just, ugh. I mean, and I don't mean to, I know that a lot of these people have their hearts in the right place and they really think that they're helping, but, and believe me, I was there at one point in my life. I'll admit that I was pro-gun. I was. Pro-gun control. I thought that.
I was too.
I had no idea, though. I mean, I really had never, ever, the
as a teacher too, I see how the kids are being brainwashed in school to be, anti-guns. Yeah. And and it's sweet because they're just like, we don't want people to die. Guns are bad. Guns kill people, but they're not really given an alternative point of view, and it's just so annoying because I feel like there's only so much I can do, but I see it going as a teacher too, and Yeah, no, I have to watch what I say, too, because I don't want to get fired. But I'll try and be subtle, and I'll try, if it does come up, I'll try and give them an alternative point of view in a very sneaky way.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things where, I mean, I've gotten into it with people before, and it's really hard to change anybody's mind if they're set on that they're in favor of gun control. But it's a weird. I still can't, now that I've actually looked at it and analyzed it, I don't understand how you think that going to somebody, which is the government, who has a history of violence, and then is actually going to keep you safe. You're going to them, they're violent, and they get to have the guns. They get to have all the guns.
Yeah, well, with the people that are pro-gun control are stuck in their ego and their moral high ground, and they're not, they think, because in my instance, too, it's like the people that are really gun control have really never for the most part, have never been in a situation maybe where they were attacked, or they lived in really safe areas and stuff. So they would just like, well, why do you need a gun? So they just can't conceive. They just think that people that own guns are violent. They don't know that, and the only good people that have, the patron nurse talks about this, but she put it together. She put it together more eloquently than I can, but I'm paraphrasing. She said something to the fact that we've been brainwashed to believe that only the people in uniforms that have guns are the good guys, and people outside of uniforms that don't have guns, that have guns are the bad guys.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think the thing that you were talking about earlier, the Stefan Molyneux video, where he was talking, he's just basically giving you the facts of, gun violence versus gun ownership. And that's one of the points that he brought up, is that most of the people who are in favor of gun control are, middle class, white, not wealthy, but middle class, like in the middle. And they're the ones that are most likely not to own a gun, and but they don't see any reason why you would need one, because they've always been taken care of. They've never had to live in a situation where they have to worry about violence.
And it's also too, I understand that, but it's also just very selfish too, and very you're not taking other people's issues into consideration, or situations into consideration. It's very self-centered. To me, it's a very self-centered point of view to have.
It is, and I think that it's self-centered because, and this is what I get a lot from the fake liberals, is that they act like they're about liberal and and being open, but they're actually only if you agree with them.
Yeah, which is hypocrisy, because liberals are supposed to be open to change.
Right, they're supposed to be liberal. They're supposed to be liberal-minded, and believe in liberty, and have all these, but they don't. They just want you to think like they do, and if you don't, then they don't want you around. They want to force you to think the way that they do.
Yeah.
And so that's, it was like that guy that was arguing with you on your site, the gun control video. Actually, he didn't comment on yours. I think you made a response to his video on the YouTube channel, and then he was, it was just so obvious that he had never been in a situation where he'd ever have to worry about being attacked or having any kind of violence. Just living in a world of privilege.
Yeah.
You don't think about it, and then you're not really, you're judging people who. So to me, that's a form of classism and racism as well.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking of yourself and your own situation.
Superiority complex, in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Putting people that would want to own a gun below you or beneath you, and
their feeble minds don't understand. They're just uneducated and uncivilized.
Yeah, and just you got to check it out. See, this is the way people think. Or there's these shows on TV now that show like reality shows. I'm sure they're not real, but they show like these guys with guns, and they're all like rednecks and things like that. So you think it's either like those guys or it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Right, it's the gangbangers, and it's not. And I mean, I don't own a gun, but I'm not in favor of government control in any.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys can't figure that out by now, if you've listened to this show enough times, I'm like borderline anarchist.
Yeah.
No government control whatsoever. I mean, that's kind of how I roll. I mean, aside from just the certain laws, you don't steal, you don't kill, you don't. I mean,
but then those are like moral, right?
Right.
Those are like ethical.
Yeah, as long as you have, and you have the ability to just put someone to jail if they actually kill somebody or do something really heinous, but do something horrible, But other than that, I'm in favor of living your life and with minimal to no government intervention.
Yeah.
So they should be there to serve us, not to take rights away from us.
And one more point I want to add too. I think you need to. It's good to kind of try and get into the other person's side. Try and get into the other person's head and see why they would think that way, to try and come to some kind of middle ground. And I feel like with the gun control issue, I'm like, okay, I get why people are for gun control, but at the same time, I feel like I haven't really met anybody that's willing to see my side of things.
Yeah.
You know, like you're saying, they're just like, oh, well, you know.
No, I agree.
It makes me that you're like, you know,
right.
Feeble mind can't understand. Oh,
yeah.
It's your fault. You know, it's because if you had an education, you know.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I got into it with somebody on the gun control issue once in a while, a friend on Facebook, and she was kind of getting mad at me. She thought that I wasn't thinking that she had thought it through, and I'm like, but you didn't think it through because you're not
even listening to what I have to say.
Right, you're not even, because I was using the comparison of the country of Switzerland, which has almost no violence, and they actually are armed society, because they just, they realize people are going to own guns, and so they just teach everybody how to use them, and they also are teachers of safety and using guns safely.
But, I also think it comes down to the society, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely, I think we're a society because we have guns. We need guns. Our citizens need guns. Now, when I was in Taiwan, the citizens weren't allowed to own guns. And, the type of society that they have they're very trusting of each other. They're very thoughtful. So I don't think that they would even if guns were made legal, I don't think the citizens would even really get guns.
Yeah.
But at the same time, guess who did have the guns? The gangbangers. There were gangsters in Taiwan. They weren't supposed to have them, but they got them. So
sure.
Just because something is illegal doesn't mean that people are still going to find a way to get them, basically.
Yeah.
Exactly.
People are still going to find the criminals, if they want them bad enough, they're going to get them. And definitely people in the drug wars and in selling illegal drugs and things like that is going to be. So I think that's really the issue that people aren't paying attention to. And when they're going on and Piers Morgan and talking about all that, he's really not even scratching the surface of what the problem is because no one's really addressing the drug issue.
Yeah.
And that's, and they're, I don't know. Like, that's why I liked Ron Paul, because he was like, it's not, if somebody has an addiction to drugs, they're not a criminal. They're actually, they have a medical condition. It's a medical problem. They needs to be treated as such, not actually sent to jail. So,
and in that sense too, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's like, you're treating them like a criminal. They're gonna, they're gonna become criminals by having to, hurt people in order to get what they want, what they need.
Yeah, exactly. And they're hiding in the shadows, and they're hiding their addiction, and they're not telling people about it.
Yeah.
And because it's so stigmatized. And so he's, here was, Ron Paul is like such a straight-laced guy, but he really understood what freedom and liberty were, because he's like, it's not about what I do with my life. It's not about what I choose to do. It's about that people get to make their own choices, and sometimes it means you get to make a mistake.
And that's the cool thing about him too, because obviously I don't think he grew up in an inner city. You know what I mean? He was somebody that actually seems like he tries to get inside the other side of the argument and tries to come down to other people's level instead of trying to be above them. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not about. He's a real liberal.
Yeah.
He's not a fake liberal. That's a real liberal because he believes in liberty, and he doesn't care. It's not about you have to think like me and be like me. He's like, because look at that guy. He's like pushing 80, and he's going, I think that drugs should be legal because it's not about what I do or what he goes. I'm not gonna. So he's like, who? I remember he said at the debate, he was like, who in here who's not doing drugs today, if they became legal, would suddenly go out and buy black tar heroin? Nobody would do it, because if you're not doing it now, you're not going to do it just because it becomes legal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the effects, what it does to you. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So some people choose to smoke, some people don't. Some people choose to drink, some people don't. So it's like.
Yeah.
You know the effects of it, and if it becomes a problem in your life and you become addicted, you should be able to be treated without the stigma of being treated like a criminal.
Yeah.
And if we actually took out all of the drug-related, the nonviolent drug-related crimes, we would be closing down prisons.
Yeah, you're right.
We would be closing down because there wouldn't be a need for so many prisons. We'd have such a. We're a gun culture, we're a crime culture, and we have. But it's really because of this these really ridiculous rules, this prohibition
Yeah.
that is just really enforcing. And that's the whole, again, that's the fake liberal mentality. Think like me, be like me. If you're not, then you're wrong. And that's where I don't fall for that nonsense anymore.
Yeah.
And so, great interview. Love the Patriot Nurse. So please, everybody, we're going to close out because I think we're out of time here. But we want to thank her for coming on the show today, and we hope that you check out her YouTube channel. She has a YouTube channel. It's just under the Patriot Nurse. Does she have another website or anything? Or
thepatriotnurse.com. Yeah.
And you can also find her on Facebook, and that's where I think she makes her announcements about the classes that she's teaching and those types of things that she teaches about how to clean up wounds and how to do things like that. She's a nurse, so she teaches nursing skills and how to self-reliance. And so she's a cool chick. So we're really honored to have her on. It will be a really great show. So anyway, so we're Truth or Talk. Please visit our website, truthertease.com, shop truthertease.com. Thank the Patriot Nurse for being on the show, and check her out. Check us out. And as always, with peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love, guys.
What are they really after? Connect these 7 dots. Number 1, they're against extending unemployment benefits to people who have been out of work for more than 6 months, even though there's still only 1 job for every 3 unemployed. Number 2, they don't want to raise the minimum wage, even though today's federal minimum is 25% below what it was in 1968, adjusted for inflation. Number 3, they're against extending Medicaid benefits to millions of low-wage workers. Number 4, they want to cut food stamps. Number 5, they refuse to invest in education or job training. Number 6, they don't want to rebuild America's crumbling infrastructure or have any other jobs program. And number 7, they're out to bust unions. Do you see a pattern here? They're waging a war against the poor and the working class in order to keep people down. Because when you're unemployed, without any support, without any bargaining power, yet you have to feed your family, you're desperate. And when you're desperate, you'll take whatever they are willing to pay you, even if it's next to nothing. And you won't dare make a fuss. You won't complain about unsafe work conditions or toxic chemicals leaking out of storage tanks or anything else. You won't run the risk of trying to form a union. You won't get involved in politics. You won't make a ruckus or rock the boat in any way. You'll take whatever they choose to give you because you are sinking. Make no mistake, this war against the poor and working class is designed to make sure Americans who've been losing ground for 30 years don't dare do anything about it. Without extended unemployment benefits, a declining real minimum wage, no Medicaid, no food stamps, no education, job training, or jobs program, and no union, you'll do exactly as they tell you, and that's fine with them. But it's bad for America. As a first step to stopping this war on the poor and working class, call your senator and demand the Senate pass extended emergency unemployment benefits. As a second step, watch Inequality for All and get the big picture.
The number of homeless sleeping each night in the New York City shelter system has surpassed 50,000 people for the first time in 3 decades. According to a report by the Coalition for the Homeless, more children and adults are homeless now in New York City than at any time since the Great Depression.
In the last 7 years, thousands and thousands of families in New York City have lost their jobs. They have become unemployed. And rents, the cost of housing in New York is so high that they can't afford to pay rent. So even though they're working or they've become recently unemployed, there's thousands of them who have no place to live.
While many turn to shelters, a skyrocketing number of people have sought refuge in the city's subway stations and carts, notably in the brutally cold winter months. According to the city's annual Hope NYC Street Survey, there were more than 1,800 people living on the subways in 2013, up from 1,000 in 2009.
The shelters are sometimes dangerous. You have people in a closed space together. There's a lot of mental illness, and there's also drug use. And for children moms and dads who are working and have children who are homeless, they have fear sometimes when they go into the shelters. So weirdly, oddly, they prefer to sleep on a subway train than to go into the shelter mainly because of the conditions of personal safety.
Last week, it was reported that transit workers and the NYPD had set up a plan to clear homeless men and women out of the subway system starting Monday at 3 a.m. However, after facing opposition by advocacy groups and a report in the local news outlet DNA Info, they were forced to tone down their language, insisting the so-called, quote, outreach program was to be voluntary. With the homeless population above and below ground at an all-time high, many believe significant progress will only come about with an increased supply of permanent housing for families and support services for the mentally ill.
Russia's actions are a problem. They don't pose the number one national security threat.